how did you and anybody knows Jeff, when you see him greeting, he's got a big smile and he's greeting everybody. What brought you to your faith?
So a lot of things. I would say that probably I've always been a believer, but I didn't trust the church.
Okay.
And if you think back, I mean, I'm 57 years old. I was raised at the time of televangelism.
Right. Billy Graham
well, he was the good one. I'm thinking more of, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker.
Okay.
And those type that would, send me all your money and you're going to be blessed.
Right.
And so I didn't like some of the hypocrisy that I saw of people that said they were Christians and were going to church and then would go out and not live
the life.
Right. Not set a good example. And again, none of us are perfect.
No, we're all flawed.
We're none of us, and nor will we ever be perfect while we're on this planet.
For sure.
But we should try our best to set a good example.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the show with your host, RJ Montoya.
Hey, what's up, guys? RJ Montoya. Welcome to another wonderful podcast, the Montoya Power Podcast. So today we got a special guest in Brigadier General U.S. Army retired Jeff Pugh. What's going on, Jeff? How you been?
It's another glorious day for God and country.
Hey, I love that. Yeah, I love the motivation.
And I'm highly motivated at all times.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we're going to talk about that and deep get into that stuff. So there's a couple topics that you want to jump on with motivation and faith and mentorship. You're a leader, obviously. You're a general, retired, and you have a lot of experience. So tell us a little bit about your background before we get into it.
So I did 34 years off and on in the military, Army Reserve, National Guard, some active duty deployments. But I started in January 1988 as a private E2 in the Army Reserve.
Okay.
While I was in college, I gave up an ROTC scholarship to go be a private so I could go to basic training and learn what it's like to be a real soldier as opposed to just an officer. But I got my commission through ROTC through college.
Awesome, yeah.
And then commissioned and then continued with my career, went a lot farther and a lot longer than I ever expected to.
Wow. When you first started, and that's interesting you said that, in the Marine Corps, we would call them lifers, and I wanted to be a lifer. Life got in the way. But did you see that when you first got in?
Well, my goal, I was raised in a military family. My wife was raised in a military family. So we both of us moved around, our whole lives.
Oh, wow.
So my goal going to college was to be an Army officer. Man, I was going to be an airborne ranger. I was going to be HUA. I was going to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. Hey. But then while I was in college, the Berlin Wall came down. They started talking about cutbacks in the military. Yeah. I had a wife. I had another kid on the way. And I was running a grocery store in college. And I started catching shoplifters. Uh-oh. And I'm like, I kind of like this cop thing. So
I did loss prevention for a while, man. I got in trouble once or twice. They changed some rules in Home Depot because of me.
I think all of us that are active in life have rules or policies that have our name next to it.
Yeah,
I have a couple. at the police department.
Yes.
I have one at TxDOT. So I'm in their TxDOT rules because of a crash that I worked out on Interstate Highway 20 once upon a time.
Wow. That's crazy.
So
I love to hear
that just
about
means
that.
You're active and you're out making decisions, trying to make things happen. So,
and they say there's always one.
There's always one.
I love that. So tell us a little bit more about him. Did you know you were going to be a lifer? Is that something you wanted to do?
I went to my wife. We discussed it because all she wanted me to do was Army. She was very nervous about not being active duty military because of the security that offers.
The lifestyle, the
lifestyle
structure.
And everything, because that's all we knew growing up. But I convinced her, and luckily enough, I got hired by a local police officer, off a department here in Arlington, Texas. And sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off.
It's all right.
So
busy man, Jeff Pugh.
Well, I'm retired twice, but I work 3 part-time jobs.
Yes, you do. Yeah,
it's because I'm highly motivated at all times.
That's right.
So I convinced her to do that. That's what we decided to do. So I decided I'm going to be a full-time cop and a part-time soldier.
Okay.
My goal. My dad retired active duty Army as a lieutenant colonel after 20 years. My grandfather retired from the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel after 30 years. He was Army Air Corps in World War II, flew in Korea, flew in Vietnam, and then retired. My dad flew in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot.
Thank you for your family service.
You bet.
Yeah.
Well, that's the family was raised. That's to country, duty, family, and then taking care of things, being servants.
Hey, I love that servant leadership. And there's only like 1 or 2% of the American population that serves.
Yep.
So
and almost all of the ones that serve now have a relative that has served.
Yes. True.
Usually it's either a father, brother, uncle, aunt, whatever, or mother, and it's a dwindling population of people that don't have any experience with the military at all joining the military.
For sure. Remember that Memorial Day when you guys are
Amen.
barbecuing, which is
You
a great
bet.
day, but just show some remembrance there.
Yeah. So my goal was I wanted to make lieutenant colonel, and I wanted to be a battalion commander.
Okay.
So that was my goal.
Goal oriented.
And I achieved. If I made lieutenant colonel, I figured I met the standard. That was the family standard. I was good with that.
There you go.
And then I just kept getting promoted. They kept sending, the Army kept asking me to go to schools, kept putting me in command, and so I just kept going.
Was that difficult? Because all the schooling plus what you had to do, like how's the work ethic there?
It is. I will admit to being a workaholic. I started working when I was 12, and I've always had multiple jobs.
Wow.
In college, I worked full time. Plus, I was in the Army Reserve. Plus, I was in ROTC. Plus, I was carrying a full load of classes, which my grade point average shows that. I was on the 5.5-year plan, but I got there.
There you go.
Well,
there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly, and you just keep moving forward. Whatever it is in life, set your goals and just keep moving forward, and eventually you'll get there. Life's going to throw roadblocks. There's gonna be stumbling blocks. You're gonna sometimes have to take a detour around some stuff, but you can get there if you stick with the plan.
And that's a lot of self-awareness, right? You have to know that you're going to go through trials, and it's just part of the game.
Life's not perfect.
It's not. Did you? How was that for your wife, for Connie?
So it was rough at times, and it of course, like anything else, if it was going to break, it was while I was either away doing military duty or I was on a deployment.
Okay.
Both of my kids were in their teenage years during my 3 deployments to Iraq. So I wasn't the one to teach them how to shave. A friend of mine from the police department came over and helped them shave the first time.
It takes a community to raise family.
It did. But luckily both my kids have turned out fine.
Absolutely.
Both of them did an enlistment in the Army Reserve as a military police. One's a police officer. One's a firefighter. The firefighter actually did a year in Afghanistan with his military police unit.
Wow.
So they're still serving. I mean, they're serving the community. They did their time in the military.
Absolutely. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. I think there's I don't want to say stigma, but some people, maybe they feel insecure around military and police. And I'm just like, there's all ways that you can serve in a church, serve your community, build a nonprofit. There's so many ways to serve.
Right.
It's not just the military.
And it is, and what I've found is the more you serve others, the more blessings you receive.
Amen.
And so, but you asked about how hard it was. It was hard on the family. There were times it was hard on me, especially when I was working full time in the Army Reserve and doing online graduate courses.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Both on my own, and then the Army sent me to the Army War College, which was another online course so I did about 6 years worth of graduate level online stuff. Plus,
how'd you stay awake? That's a lot.
Drinking a lot of coffee. But again, and I'm highly motivated all the time.
That's right.
I just kept plugging away at it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about where that came from.
Well, you asked the question about.
Go for it.
So the family, but the other thing is I was blessed to have a very supportive employer.
Oh, wow.
The city of Arlington, Texas, and the Arlington, Texas Police Department are very supportive of their reserve component people.
Awesome.
And veterans that come off of active duty or whatever. Not all people that are in the reserve components have employers that are that supportive.
That's so true. Yes.
And I'm confident that the only reason I was able to keep moving up the ranks in the Army Reserve is because my employer supported it and my family supported it. I couldn't have done it otherwise.
That's amazing. And there's laws to protect service members, but that doesn't mean that employers have to abide by them in the sense of they could find ways to kind of get rid of you.
There are some that play the game.
Yeah.
And the city of Arlington and the Arlington Police Department go above and beyond what the rules or the laws require.
That's awesome. Shout out to you guys.
You bet. And so I didn't want to pass up that opportunity. But so how did I become highly motivated at all times? Very few people have, and I've been using this since I was 22, maybe 21, while I was in college. And most people automatically assume it's Army related or military related.
Gung ho, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I will admit that that's part of it, because when I went to basic training at Fort Benning, now it's Fort Moore, my drill sergeants taught me as a young private that, false motivation is better than no motivation.
Hey, fake it till you make it.
Fake it. I was going to say, fake it till you make it. Yes. So, and there's a lot of that to it. And in the rough spots, like I said earlier, keep moving forward. Find something to self-motivate yourself to keep moving through those obstacles, those hardships, those difficult times.
Absolutely.
So that was part of it. But when I was running a grocery store, I was in the Army ROTC at college. I was carrying 18 hours a semester. I was working 50 hours a week for my grocery store, and I was in the Army Reserve. And I had a wife.
Yeah.
And so you asked to sleep. I wasn't sleeping much. I mean, so I would, 4 hours of sleep a day every day.
Wow. Yeah,
and so I was exhausted all the time. You can carry a long time for that.
Yes, you can.
But eventually, there's payment due, and
it catches up to you.
It'll catch up.
Yeah.
So I remember one time this family come in, and this is where it all real started from. This is the big change in my life, I think, in my personality. I was a front-end manager. I was getting my degree in business administration, so I'm learning how to run a business in real time.
Yeah.
And so I see this family come in. It's a lady with these three young girls, probably 12, 13, 14 years old. Okay. They're all laughing, having a good time. They're smiling. They come into my store. They do their shopping. And I remember I was sacking their groceries coming out. Mm-hmm. And they made the mistake of asking me how I was. And I was like, man, I am worn out. I'm worn out all the time. I can't sleep. I'm working all the time. I'm doing all these things. I'm exhausted. And then I'm carrying their groceries out, and I realized none of them are smiling.
Really?
And I'm thinking to myself, that's the epiphany. That's the aha moment. I'm like, wait a minute. This family came in smiling and having a good time. They came into my store that way, and now they're leaving with frowns on their faces. That's not good business.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, wait a minute. If I can have a negative impact on people with my personality and my attitude, I bet I can have a positive impact with a positive outlook and attitude.
It's the inverse.
And it completely changed how I dealt with people for the rest of my life.
That's amazing.
And it's all about, I changed from being an energy taker and sucking the life out of people in the room to being an energy giver and being, I don't want to say the light of the party or the life of the party, because that's not what I'm talking about.
Right, for sure.
But being that person that gives the smile when somebody's down.
Right.
When the road is rough, when the obstacles are there, when the stress is heavy, being the cheerleader, the one that, hey, I'm motivated. Let's go. We can do this. We can do this.
And that's when that started for you.
That's when
mantra.
It started.
Okay.
And it was amazing to see the change. And what I found throughout my life is, one, people want to be around energy givers. They don't want to be around energy takers.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay?
There are those people that like misery loves company and so forth. And I've been accused of being too positive sometimes. And some people are, you're just so positive. I'm like, why would I want to be negative?
And exactly. There's enough negativity in the world now.
Yes, too much.
And whether it's watching on the news that just beats you down with all the bad stuff going on, either locally or internationally.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more good stuff going out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In the world.
100%.
And that's what I focus on when I'm checking Facebook and streams and reels. It's all the positivity of the day. The good deed of the day. Those types of things is what I forward and I share and that I'm looking at. that.
Absolutely, and that's how I am on my social media feed. A lot of people are like, I don't do social media because of the comments. And I'm like, you can control your algorithm. You can allow it to feed you or defeat you.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you said, because you know how the Bible does say that you can't hide, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can't hide your lamp under a basket. Like, we should radiate God's love, and that's what you're doing.
And that's kind of taking it to the next level, because my mantra was always, I'm highly motivated at all times.
Okay, here we go.
That's how everybody knew me at work. That's how everybody knew me in the military. When I was a company commander in Iraq, well, both in Iraq and here in the United States, my unit coin, was the top of the unit. You're highly motivated all the time is on the coin.
Okay.
It was on our T-shirts. It was on our mugs. Everybody knew that Alpha Company 490th Civil Affairs Battalion was highly motivated at all times.
I love that.
And so that's how I was known forever. Well, then I became a Christian and I began going to the church.
Okay.
And I'm like, so I've morphed it to more often saying highly motivated and blessed now.
Mm-hmm.
And those that knew me before and hadn't seen me until now,
Right.
it kind of takes them back. Even the police officers that still work, because I work for Texas Rangers baseball and we're in season now, and they're rotating through working the gate that
champs, I work.
And they had a great game last night, so hopefully they'll play well today.
There we go. Yeah.
So people ask me, or they see that, and it kind of shocks them that I'm not using highly motivated all times, and I still rotate back and forth, but I'm highly motivated and blessed is my new standard answer. And I do it specifically to open the door and let people know, hey, I'm a Christian.
There you go.
And if you're interested in how I got to be highly motivated and blessed, come talk to me and we'll talk about it.
I love that. So let me ask you about that. Do you find it difficult to talk about Christianity to those that are not Christians, I guess, or non-believers, for lack of better words?
It's a great question, and I'm not sure the best way that I know how to answer it, other than it's in my growth, because I came to the church late. I came to Christ late. I wasn't raised in the church, so I think
a lot of us come to the church late,
but we get there.
Yes, we get there. Yeah.
But I think so. For me, it was hard initially because I didn't know enough. I didn't feel comfortable in having those discussions. But the more I've gotten into the Bible, the more I've gotten into my small group, the more I've gotten into the church's veterans group, the more discussions I've been around, the more comfortable I've become.
Okay.
But really, it is, I want to open the door. And even if they ask me questions that I can't answer, I can get the answers for them, or I can help them get to where to get the answers.
Absolutely. And we don't have to have all the answers.
Exactly. And I don't think we ever will.
We won't. Our minds are, as human creatures, we don't have the capacity for God's knowledge.
Right.
So, and we don't need to know it all. We just have to have that faith.
Right.
But I love how you're opening doors for people.
And it amazes me, since I'm a greeter and a deacon at the church. I'm running a gate at Texas Rangers baseball at Globe Life Field, so I'm dealing with the populace all day long. Sometimes thousands of people.
Yep.
And I use it, and that's all I say. But sometimes it plants that seed, and it's amazing to see the responses I get,
Yes.
both from my coworkers as well as citizens at large.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to being that highly motivated and being that energy giver, I really started doing it when I was out dealing with people that are in public service.
Okay.
The waiters, the wait staff, the drivers, the bus drivers, the cabbies, the hotel desk clerks,
Right.
that don't get a lot of positivity.
No, they don't.
And trying to,
But they keep this country going.
hey, they do. They're out there. They're working hard. A lot of them are, either supporting a family or they're putting themselves through school. And so sometimes that may be the only positive interaction they have.
For sure.
And
That's
so,
Yeah.
trying to do that type of thing.
I love that. I love that. Let's talk a little bit more about your military career. I'm sure there was a lot of pros and cons and stuff. So you've gotten to a point, like even in my career, I was just like, man, I would love to be at a certain level. I wanted to go be an officer eventually. In the Marine Corps, they call them Mustangs, probably in the Army too. That's where you're enlisted and then you become an officer, or vice versa, I think. Yeah. But
No, it listed it to officer. Yeah.
How was that journey for you? Because you've had a long career, a lot of accolades.
So
you do a lot of public speaking.
I do now, and that's for an extroverted introvert. I've learned because of both my careers, both in law enforcement and being a supervisor and leader there, as well as in the military. I'm more comfortable now talking to people and being out in front of groups. But it's not my happy place. It's not.
Wow.
I mean, I'm much more comfortable sitting on my couch with my dogs, with my wife in the room, reading a book, rather than being out in a public place. It's just.
But you're so good at it.
That's what people say, but it's because my personality that I'm introverted. It's exhausting.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, my battery gets short too. Yeah,
and so now, my church is what recharges my battery.
I love that.
Start the day, start the week over, and go out there and work the mission field.
I love that. How did you? And anybody knows Jeff, when you see him greeting, he's got a big smile and he's greeting everybody. What brought you to your faith?
So a lot of things. I would say that probably, I've always been a believer, but I didn't trust the church.
Okay.
And if you think back, I mean, I'm 57 years old. I was raised at the time of televangelism.
Right. Billy Graham
well, he was the good one. I'm thinking more of Jim and Tammy Faye Baker.
Okay.
And those type that would send me all your money and you're going to be blessed.
Right.
And so I didn't like some of the hypocrisy that I saw of people that said they were Christians and were going to church and then would go out and not live
the life.
Right. Not set a good example. And again, none of us are perfect.
No, we're all flawed.
We're none of us, and nor will we ever be perfect while we're on this planet.
For sure.
But we should try our best to set a good example.
Absolutely. Well, we're commanded to try. I mean, even in the Bible, Jesus says that not everyone's going to go to heaven, even Christians. There's a, and I'm paraphrasing, but Jesus says that you may go to heaven, and if you're not doing following his teachings, he's going to say, "Turn away from me, I never knew you." So you're right. We should strive to be Christ-like, even though we'll never be perfect. But we should work towards it every day. That's part of the transformation as Christians.
And so my wife has always been a believer. She was raised in the church off and on. She spent a lot of time with both sets of her grandparents up in Missouri. So she went to some of the smaller churches and things.
Right.
So she always wanted us to go. And I always kind of, for one, I was busy all the time. I wasn't home on weekends. And so it's hard to be part of something when you're gone 1 or 2 weekends
Absolutely.
out of every month.
And you had a lot of responsibility because you had as a commander, as a general, you have all these logistics things, humans who are logistical in different ways that you had to deal with, and so you were busy.
If you care about your unit and your people,
true welfare.
It's not 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. Not in the National Guard, not in the reserve component in any form. Not if you're doing it right and taking care of your people and the mission.
And that applies at church too.
It does.
24/7.
And again, I'm a firm believer that it's mission in the military, mission first, people always.
I love that.
I mean, that's how I was raised, and that's what I was taught, and that's what I believe when it comes to that. Part of that selfless service. Hey, if I need to sacrifice myself to make the mission happen, then that's what I'm willing to do that.
Right.
That's why I enjoyed being a police officer. I'd made the same commitment when I swore that oath and put on that badge and put on that uniform and went out to try to take care of my community.
And I think that's awesome too, because for those in the civilian sector that don't exactly know how a general operates or the mindset of a general, yet here you are in a higher rank, but you put yourself in a position of a servant. So I think that's amazing. So it's very admirable.
It is, I went through a lot of different leadership courses in college, a lot in the military, a lot in law enforcement, because I promoted up through the ranks in the law enforcement realm also. But I've always considered myself a servant leader. I've always felt that that's my job, is to help set other people up for success. And the higher in rank I got to go in both of my careers, the more people I got to help. And what I learned, and this is part of the presentation I used to give to all my soldiers when I was a commander and going around visiting all my units, is that I never worried about my own career. I didn't worry about me. I worried about taking care of the mission that I was assigned for my organization, and setting my subordinates up for success, and teaching my subordinate leaders to set their subordinates up for success.
I love that. Yeah.
And
it's a domino effect at the end of the day.
If you look at it or think about it as a pyramid,
okay.
If the leader at the top of the pyramid is teaching their subordinates to setting them up for success and teaching them to set others up for success, and that permeates all the way down, then the people that are doing the work, where the rubber meets the roadway, the foundation of that pyramid,
the worker bees
that are really getting it done for us.
Yeah.
If they're being set up for success, then the entire pyramid is on a firm foundation.
For sure.
And everybody,
you set a standard.
And everybody at every level, yes.
Yeah.
Every person, every leader at every level is successful. And it wasn't me that helped me become a general. It was my soldiers and my subordinate leaders that accomplished the missions that they were assigned.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, it comes back to you, even if that's not what you're trying to do. It comes back because they're like, wait a minute, who's under the command? Oh, they're under General Pugh.
If all of my subordinate units are successful, then by default, my organization is going to be successful because everybody below me is now successful.
For sure.
And that was the mindset that I utilized in training and mentoring my junior leaders throughout my career.
So just to be fair, like, how do you weed out those that are in charge, whether they're a sergeant or lower rank or whatever? Because in order for you to have a formula of success, you're going to have those that don't want to, comply, or who think they're mini bosses. Like, is there leadership training there?
So really, it's a great question. And one of the ways that I would describe it is there's 4 reasons really that people don't do what they're supposed to do. Okay. Number 1 is they don't know what they don't know.
True.
Okay. So you fix that by training and mentorship. Okay. Number 2, I'm trying to remember them all. Number 2 is there is a obstacle in the way.
Okay.
And they haven't figured out how to beat the obstacle, whether that's life obstacle, family obstacle, work obstacle, education obstacle, but there's something in the way that they need some help to overcome. Okay. So the object is, as a leader, you help them overcome it. You teach them or show them or give them the lift up to accomplish or get over that obstacle or around it in a legal, moral, ethical way.
For sure.
Then the third one is there's people that I know what I'm supposed to do, but I ain't going to do it. You can't make me do it.
Right, yes.
That you fix by counseling, documentation, and termination. Okay. And as a general, I was the final signatory on quite a few people to kick out of the military.
For sure. And it's got to get really serious if it gets up to the general.
And I would counsel people, and when I was a colonel, I would have every unit that I went to, if there was an E4 corporal and above, so basically every leader level that sat through my presentation, and it was about an hour presentation, hour and 15 minutes, would sign a sign-in roster, and they would sign a individual counseling form with this is what we covered, and then I would countersign it, and I kept all of those.
Wow, that's amazing.
For every unit that I went through.
Yeah.
Well, as a general, he ain't got time for all that stuff. So what I would only have them, have them sign a sign-in roster for everybody that sat in on it, so that if they came to me in their discipline packet, if they made a mistake or did something dumb, and I had to kick them out or decide if I was kicking them out, I went back and looked at that unit. Did you attend my presentation? Did you know what right looked like? Did you know what the expectations were? And that would help me decide how to handle it. But if they were in my rating chain, if I was their rater or their senior rater that did their evaluation every year or every, whatever, they had to sign a counseling form because it was their initial counseling from their rating chain.
Wow.
So, and I will tell you, I had commanders, subordinate commanders that did not get good ratings. I had to sit down with some people and let them know that, hey, I'm not recommending you for promotion to colonel. Hey, you're the worst battalion commander I've ever seen, and rated them 28 out of 28 on an evaluation.
Yeah.
I mean, and when a promotion board sees that person's not going to get promoted.
Did that motivate any of them to improve?
Some of them, yes.
Okay.
And because most of them didn't come to them blind. They knew if they were going to get a bad evaluation, they knew it was coming.
Okay.
But there were others, though, that were able to fix what was going on. And some of them, it was a longer journey than others. So
I love that because you said you're introverted, but you come off, I don't want to say a people person, but you care about people. And because you come back and you do follow-ups, like, hey, are you on the roster? Did you take this course? Like, it shows that you understand that your greatest resource are people. So for those people that don't understand that, you had a formula and a system, and you saw that it was working and it produced results. What would you say to a company or organization or even a church that is missing those steps? Where do they find these resources or these formulas to build their team up?
You cannot get one-dimensional on what is the best style of leadership or the best style of supervision.
Right.
You have to, because we are not cookie cutters.
No. We
are all people. We all have our flaws. We all have our good days and our bad days. So that would probably be the best thing. For me, I want to acknowledge that even with all the success that I had in my careers, that doesn't mean that I didn't make mistakes, that I didn't make the bad call, the wrong call, or recommended the wrong person for promotion, or vice versa, because I'm human too. I tried the best I could and did the best I could for everybody. But I had bad leaders in both my careers, and I learned just as much from the bad leaders as I did for the good leaders.
You can always learn.
And sometimes even more. I'm definitely not going to act like that person when I'm in that job. For sure. But I also had some really great ones. I had some great mentors. I learned, and I was willing enough, because my ego is not to the point that I'm not willing to learn from others that are my subordinates.
That's
and
how you stunt your growth.
Yeah, and I would teach my folks or explain to them that, hey, if you're the leader, the ultimate responsibility is yours.
Yes.
And
message.
But if you get good ideas from your subordinates and it goes well, don't hog that glory.
True.
You push that down.
Yeah.
Let everybody above and around you know who came up with that idea and who executed it to success.
I love that. I always say, give people their flowers. Give people that everybody needs a W. Everybody needs to win.
Yes, but on the opposite side of that, if you approve it and you endorse it and it tries and fails, don't let them take the blame, because the ultimate responsibility is yours. Chalk it up as a learning experience.
It's true.
But if it was made, if the effort was there in good faith and they tried to do it and it was ethical and moral and they were trying to meet the mission, don't hang them out to dry for it.
Right.
Because just because we doing everything, as I tell them, the right way, the right time, the right reason, the right thing, doesn't mean it's always going to work out the way we expect.
Absolutely. Yes. It's trial and error a lot of the times. How do you break up cliques?
Well, that's one of the better things about the Army Reserve or the military. It's a little harder in the National Guard because they're more localized. But you transfer.
Okay.
People eventually will transfer.
Yes.
And so that's one way to break up cliques.
Yes.
The other thing that I have done, or I have seen done, or I've helped others to do, is reassign people within an organization. When I was a battalion commander, we didn't have cliques so much, but we were very unorganized. We were a rank-heavy organization.
Okay.
And there didn't seem to be a lot of who knows who's working for who.
Right.
And so I came up with a concept of having a draft day. So I reorganized the organization, and I had basically 5 units, subordinate units, and then 4 ghost units that were empty.
Really?
so that everybody knew, and I made them get in those formations, and we did it, moving people on the right rosters the right way.
Right.
But when I first came up with it, people thought I was mad, and I'm like, because I had that brain going, and I'm like, no. And it was amazing to see the transformation of the organization when I did that.
And they had to have faith in your vision because you had a vision.
Right.
You could see this 3, 4, 5 years out.
Yeah, and so it was very interesting to see that. So, and it wasn't, that one wasn't really as much moving clicks, except that that was a secondary effect for some of the clicks that I didn't know were there.
Right.
So that's one way to do it. But
and they were revealed through that process.
It was revealed for that process.
Okay.
Because some people will say, well, I want to be in that unit. Well, why? Well, because I want to be with these people.
Right.
No. When I took my company, my civil affairs company, to Iraq as a company commander in 08, 09, we were, the reserve was, especially civil affairs, was rotating, deploying so often that we were mix and matching units. And I had to move some people around, and it wasn't so much clicks, it was personalities and rank structures, and find the right match for my subordinate units.
Makes so much sense. Yes.
And again, you don't always get that right halfway through the deployment. Sometimes you got to move some people around. One of my mentors been both law enforcement and in the Army. We reversed roles when we switched uniforms. I was the boss in the police department. He was my boss in the Army, and which some people were like, "How do you guys do that?" I said, "Because we're professionals and we respect one another." But
yes.
but it was when people realized that we reversed roles when we changed jobs and changed uniforms, it kind of threw them off. But he was a great mentor, great leader, and he told me before we deployed to Iraq in 2003, because he was my first combat commander, and I was one of his subordinates. He said, "Hey, some of the people in the unit, the organization that you think could do really well are not, and some of the people that you think are absolutely useless are going to shine and blossom."
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see that happen.
Like David the Shepherd.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. So, speaking about subordinates, what's some advice that you would give a subordinate that maybe is going through a tough season? What motivation would you give them so that eventually they get through that valley, and like you said, they'll be that amazing leader?
The first thing I would say is, if you have to let your chain of command, your supervisors, know if there's something in your life that's dragging you down, there's an obstacle in your way, because one of the things in my presentation that I always do with my subordinates which is why my subordinates always call it the red line briefing.
Okay.
And I got it from one of my mentors in the Army, is write out all the tasks that you're assigned from higher, your chain of command, your boss gives you, hey, here's what I need your unit to do, and you lay them out, and then all the resources that you're given to do that with, whether that's people or money or equipment. And invariably, there's always more tasks than there are resources to do.
Yes.
And so,
so
I always tell them, when you get to that point, you have to draw a great big fat line.
Okay.
But that's just the task and resources, or the resources that the organization gives you. Mm-hmm. But we're also human. We have other things going on outside of our jobs. And so that's the work-life balance that we talk about.
That's very important.
And sometimes you got to draw that red line somewhere a little bit higher than the normal red line.
Yes.
But if your boss doesn't know it, they're making decisions based on the red line they see.
Yes.
Because they don't know what's going on in the rest of your life. They don't know you have a sick parent or a sick child or somebody fighting cancer, or that your wife or your spouse lost their job, so now you're falling behind on your mortgage payments. They don't see that, or they don't know that you're taking additional classes on your own at night and trying to get a master's degree or finish out your bachelor's degree. And you have to let your bosses know that. You don't have to get into the nitty-gritty, but you've got to let them know, so the boss can make good decisions about how many tasks they're giving you.
Right.
So that takes community. And again, some bosses don't care.
True.
And that just means that, hey, remember when you're that boss at that level to keep caring.
Right.
Or, hey, maybe that's not the right organization for you if they don't care about their people.
And at the end of the day, before they get to you, like to the general, there's multiple bosses, I guess, so to speak. Right. If they don't want to create a stigma for themselves. At the end of the day, they got to make a decision, right?
Right.
They either got to go to another position or another job. Right. So it's worth having that conversation, right?
It is. And, and unfortunately, that's why a lot of folks get out of the military, especially out of the reserves. Hey, I did my first enlistment, but my employer's not supportive. Or my new wife, my new husband is not supportive of my military time, and they got to get out.
Right.
You have to decide where are your priorities going to be. Mm-hmm. Some people that I've worked with, either worked for or have worked for me in the military, ended up changing their civilian careers and going to different companies that were more supportive of their military careers.
Right.
There were some that I would have discussions with it saying, hey, you need to finish up your bachelor's degree, or if you have your bachelor's degree, start knocking out classes for a master's program. Because it doesn't just help you in the military, but it helps you on your civilian side. You just may not realize it yet.
Okay.
And vice versa. And having those conversations and saying, hey, you don't have to finish it in a year. You don't have to finish, take a class at a time.
There's an expectation there.
In the Army my first master's program was online in emergency and disaster management, and I used Army tuition assistance to help pay for that. Now, my employer also had tuition reimbursement, would have paid for some of it, but I just used the Army's, and then the Army sent me to another master's at the U.S. Army War College. So those conversations have to be had, but the part when you go into talking to the subordinate, you have to help them and tell them, hey, if you need to take a knee to drink water and take a break from your military service for a little while, so to go get your bachelor's degree or to go get your master's, or you're starting a new career with a new company, go get your feet on it. Or you just got married and you got a baby on the way.
Yes.
Take a knee. But hey, if you decide 4 years from now, come back to us.
Right.
We're still going to be here. We're still going to need you because you're still a good soldier.
Oh yeah, especially if you're starting and you're early on in your career.
Right.
So to wrap it up a little bit here, you're super motivating. You do a lot of running. You have a lifetime experience. You like to serve. What are 5 tips that you would give to someone to stay highly motivated and blessed?
I've never thought about it that way. Probably number one is you have to be comfortable with yourself. Understand you're not going to be perfect.
Right.
And it's okay to not be perfect. None of us are perfect. And that's probably one of the things that eventually helped me get to coming to church and coming to Christ, is I finally realized
that's powerful.
He doesn't expect me to be perfect.
Yes.
He's just going to help me get better.
Hey, I love that. Yes.
And so that would be one is, hey, understand yourself. Be comfortable with who you are and know that you're not perfect. Because as soon as you accept that you're not perfect, you're going to be more willing to give grace to others when they're not perfect.
So good, yes.
So that's one, because it's all about taking care of people. If you care about people and you provide them energy, you be that energy giver when they need it, they're going to want to hang around with you.
For sure. And we need community.
And it spreads. It's that ripple of that rock into the pond, and all of a sudden you start getting those ripples.
Yep.
And if you train others or teach others and show others to do that, it can be very empowering.
Yes.
And the more, and again, fake it till you make it. False motivation is better than no motivation. If that's how you need to start, to train yourself to look at the bright side, to be that glass half full person, then that's how you should start.
I love that.
But at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, it has to become genuine. You have to buy in.
Yes.
It has to be in your heart, because if it's in your heart, it's in your head, and that is when it becomes visible to everybody.
I love that, yes, because you got to eventually start walking, but eventually you got to start running.
Yeah. And so be a servant leader. Serve your family, serve your community, serve your church, serve your organization, but be a servant leader. And the more you are a servant leader, the more empowered you become, because more and more people are going to come to you for advice, for mentorship,
for sure,
for motivation, for energy. And if you think about it, there's been no better example of servant leadership than Jesus Christ.
Amen. Perfect example, yes.
Perfect example.
Yes, absolutely.
So So that's probably the best thing. But just understanding that you're not going to be perfect. Try to do the right thing at the right time in the right way and for the right reasons. But understanding that even if you do all four of those things, it's not always going to work out.
True.
And then if it doesn't work out right, chalk it up as a learning experience and keep moving forward.
Yes.
That would probably be the best way to give that advice to people.
I love that. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, Jeff. You're a blessing, and thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your service and what you continue to do in the community. Highly motivated and blessed. Yes,
Highly
you are.
motivated and blessed. And I tell you, I want to keep spreading that message.
Yes.
And I have people now that will, they'll tell me, hey, I love that.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to steal that. I said, spread it like a virus.
Yes.
And then I've had others say, how did you get that way? Or, so you're blessed. Are you Christian? Yes. Where do you go to church? Let me tell you about my church.
Hey, I love that. Yes.
Or are you a Christian? Yes. How did you get to that way? Well, let me show you the path that I had, but my path isn't everybody's path, but it is a path.
Yes.
And it has opened up some of those conversations that I never even would have contemplated having with people 15, 18, 20 years ago.
Right.
And I think it's making me a better person.
Yes. And
it's making me a better servant leader.
I love that. I love that so much. What are some last minute thoughts you just want to get out there?
Take care of your family. But just know that there's more goodness in the world than badness.
Absolutely.
And set the right example. Be a light. Be a light for yourself. Remember who you represent.
Oh, yes.
You represent yourself. You represent your family. You represent your country. If you're in the service, you represent your organization for your job when they're wearing their uniform and their name tag.
That's right.
And if you're a Christian, you're representing Jesus Christ and God.
Message.
And so get out there and set the right example when people are seeing you. Be the light so that when people look at you, they want to say, I want to be like that person. And that would be the best example that I can give.
Amen. I love that. And thank you for being on the podcast, Jeff. We'll have you back. And whenever Jeff does some speaking events, we'll make sure to plug that and update you guys. And if you got anything from this, make sure you like and subscribe. Share this with somebody that could use it. And always stay Christ-led. So get out of here. Take it easy. I appreciate you being on.
You bet.
This is awesome.
I think that went pretty good.
That's Montoya Power.